which is working smarter. In this part of the show, our guests will share insights about business and team performance, leadership development, and productivity hacks that you can action in your business. You've done some work on defining your role in the business, is that right? Rather than trying to do it all, you now have a specific role inside your company. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm the CEO of the company, so I purposely moved myself away from operations because whilst I can do operations, I become the bottleneck in doing operations. So I early on hired basically a right hand, like someone who was his nature was different to mine. He's a systems people process person, whereas I'm a vision, mission, direction, strategy person. And together we kind of where we meet, where we overlap heavily is strategy, and then we focus on different parts of the business. So that's something a lot of business owners, and me particularly when I was young in my 20s, I would handle mission, vision, drive, strategy, operations, process people. Like I'd cover the whole spectrum. And looking back on my life in my 20s, I was always the bottleneck for the business. I was the reason, like if I'm really being honest, I was the reason why businesses that failed. As much as I, want to put it on, this or that or whatever, like if I truly take responsibility, it was because I bottlenecked myself. And yeah, it's a big change for Amber, which is I've got the right people in the right place, and this is how you scale an organization.
Do you sometimes have to take a step back deliberately from situations and go,
Yeah, yeah, all the time.
yeah, because sometimes you probably see something and you go, well, that's not quite how I would do it, but you probably know that if you start getting involved, then all of a sudden you'll be taking over and you'll be doing everything again.
It's that principle applies to every layer of life, through from parenting through to business through to, again, government operate. When you step in and start to nanny somebody and you remove the responsibility for them to do it themselves, what happens is you create a dependency, and that dependency deepens the longer you stay there. So a business can't scale, a society can't scale, a family can't scale if there's one person who steps in and micromanages everything, and it's a disaster every single time. So you need to step away, and you need to you need to first trust and then allow the person who you've invited in to execute on that. And if they prove that they can't execute on it multiple times, then you swap them out with someone else. At least in a business capacity, I don't think you can do that with your children. So that's a different context.
Yeah, that's slightly different. Yeah, with children, you have a grey area, don't you? Because sometimes there is an area when you have to step in. Like if the bath is really hot and your kid just wants to jump into it, you can't let them do it. So that's the kids have a slightly fudge area for getting things right with them in that regards. Is there any tips for CEOs right now who like are listening to this and going, oh, actually, this is me. I'm the one who's bottlenecking the business, and I'm the one who's not only slowing things down in the business, I'm making things harder in my personal life, right? I'm sweating a lot,
Yeah, yeah.
working too hard. What should they do, Alex, at this point to try and move forward from that?
Bite the bullet and either step back. Now I know, like, the general reasoning for most people is that, well, the business doesn't have enough money for me to hire someone else. Like, I have to do this. It's dependent on me to execute this. Like, if I'm not here, everything's going to fall apart. Well, in that case, like, I would then argue, like, do you really have a business, or do you have just a big ass job, like, because that's kind of not the reason you run a business. Now, mind you, the nuance there is that you might just have to put that energy in the beginning. So, like, I did do that in the beginning of Amber for the first year and a half. I was the slave to the company, and I did everything. But I grew it to the point where I could finally hire someone. So this is the goal. Like, you as a business owner need to set some goals, and you need to move in the direction of delegating the things that you don't want to do, and structuring your business such that you can focus on where you add the most value. And when you are able to structure it in that way, then you lean into doing that, and you lean away from meddling in everyone else's stuff. You got to find people that you trust. So it's a hard process, but you've got to do that, and you've just got to find the right time to do it. You don't want to do it too early because you'll kill your business. You don't want to do it too late because you'll kill your business. So it's that fine line that you need to navigate. So, I know that doesn't say much, it doesn't help much, but yeah,
Well, I
find the
think
courage to
that's
do so.
true. I think that's true. There's this I mean, I think often we give out principles in business, which are like do X or do Y, and then it'll be successful. But sometimes there's a tension between different principles. Like you've got to be open to new ideas, but then you've got to be focused, right? So there's a tension between things that we have to understand as well. And I think that's what you say is right about leaning back. And also, I think if you lean back and give your team some room, then they can breathe a bit more and feel a bit more comfortable to like expand and explore ideas and find other ways of doing things. Otherwise, they tend to constantly be looking over their shoulder, thinking, "Am I doing this right?" And like they're wondering what you think about things all the time, rather than taking that leap forward and growing.
Yeah, it's really dangerous. It's the same in like again, it's the same in society. It's like, the kind of people that prosper are free people who are allowed to go and do their things. When you create a surveillance state, when you're watching people all the time, when you're like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, like, there's a reason why early America was more prosperous than what North Korea is, or what the Soviets or the communist regimes were. Like, it's because they were not on. There wasn't a boot waiting to stamp on somebody for saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. So when society is free, it prospers. Yes, there's a mess and there's mistakes along the way, but that's human nature. It's like a kid growing up. A kid's going to make mistakes. You don't stomp on the kid when he makes a mistake. So, you don't stomp on people when they make a mistake. Like, you allow them to clean it up themselves. And again, this is one of the reasons why I'm so frustrated with the world today, is like all of that's been forgotten. All of these entrepreneurial principles that have defined functional society have been thrown out the window. Now, every move you make, like Australia's turned into a gulag because, like, you go out to walk outside in the oxygen, like in the fresh air in Australia, you get arrested. You're not supposed to be here. Why are you outside? Like, it's completely mindless. So, like, yeah, the same principles extend, and this is what we're sort of not realizing in the world today. Is you cannot constrict behavior, and you cannot surveil everything that people do and expect good results. It doesn't work.
Yeah, when you build a cage around people, then how can you expect them to grow? I suppose that could be a very succinct way of
Absolutely.
looking
That
at it.
that's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, okay. So as we're talking about about the Midwest and the great America, and I can see how when America was open and you couldn't turn around and find a policeman around a rock or a mayor or someone, there was a lot more freedom just to do stuff and make stuff, and I get that idea. Is an interesting one to pursue. But let's move forward now to where you're going with your future. Well, particularly with your life and how you're trying to build a legacy. And we're going to do that in the next part of the show, Living Smarter. On this part of the show, our guest shares how they're trying to balance business growth, their working day, and personal life for them and their team. What is it that legacy means to you? What is legacy? Is that having a big pile of, not cash, I suppose, a big pile of Bitcoin, or that you can pass on? Like, can you pass it on? I heard about that guy who like left who forgot the code for his USB stick or something, and like can't access like 5 million.
Yeah, look, yeah. What you want to pass on in life is a written word. You want to pass on, or at least in my mind, you want to pass on a written word. You want to pass on, a narrative, like a story about who you were, and you also do want to pass on your wealth. And I mean, Bitcoin obviously ticks that. Like, Bitcoin will be here longer than all of us, and that's a form of wealth whose property rights are protected by math, not by a promise. That you'll be able to pass on, right? One of the biggest problems these days is, you know, passing something on, like, real estate or stocks or whatever, is dependent on the promise of a government who might turn into deranged maniacs, which we've seen happen time again in history, and we're seeing sort of happen in live action. So for me, like, leaving a legacy involves, what did I build, what did I create, what did I change? Is there a narrative, is there a story around that that people can learn from? And if I actually did add value to the world, I will have accumulated some wealth, and that wealth I would like to pass on. And I will have restrictions on my wealth in the way it's passed on, where, one of the unique things you can do with Bitcoin is, there's multi-signature, there's ways you can hold it in like multi-signature addresses, which require multiple keys to unlock, etc., which I will structure in a way that my kids, as they're growing up, they need to achieve certain milestones to actually unlock that Bitcoin for themselves so that they can have access to the wealth. So there's all sorts of really interesting things when money becomes information and programmable. Like, there's things that you can create and do with Bitcoin that you'll never be able to do with any of the legacy, uh, with the legacy world. So
Wow. So you could be like, you've got to be trending #1 on Twitter for a week for you to get your inheritance, something crazy like that.
yeah, whatever I want. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Brilliant. Okay. So one of your principles, Alex, when it comes to living smarter is focus matters and balance comes later. What does that mean exactly?
Okay, so a lot of people talk about having balance, like, take a balanced approach to life, and like all this sort of stuff. And for me, that's just another example of one of those messages to appeal to the masses, which don't mean anything. Like, they're just platitudes. Um, in order to really excel or succeed with something, you need to be obsessed for a period of time. And in fact, like, depending on the scale of success you're looking for, you may need to be obsessed for quite a long period of time. So this idea that, you can, balance everything, it's a myth. You can't. Assuming you want to be the best. If you just want to sort of be like average at everything, then sure, you can probably live a life of balance. But realistically, like, if you want to build an important business, for example, and be the best in your field, as an example, you are going to need to put a disproportionate time into that endeavor, and you need to succeed at that endeavor. And you are, by default, going to sacrifice other things. Like today, I have calls from this thing 12 hours straight. I have one 15-minute break. So I'm not going to eat today. I'm not going to go out today. I'm not going to do anything today. We're raising capital for the business, and I'm going to close. I don't care. So I'm sacrificing that. I'm sacrificing like time with my girlfriend, and I'm on like a beautiful place on the coast in Costa Rica, and I haven't even seen the beach for 3 days, and I live, like a 2-minute walk from the beach. So like, you have to make sacrifices, and you can't delude yourself into thinking that there is no sacrifice for a big gain. So it really just comes down to, you need to decide what is important for you and what areas of life you want to double down on, because like, we can't be the best at everything, number one, and we can either choose to be average at everything, or we can choose to be very good at one or two things at a particular time. And the way I solve for this on a longer term basis, I try and split my life into chapters. So this chapter of my life is extraordinarily imbalanced towards entrepreneurialism. The next chapter of my life, like once Amber's built to a point where I can kind of recede a little bit, then I will lean into writing. Like, I've probably got 18 or 19 books in my head that need to be written. So I want to go and publish a series of books, and be a writer for a few years. I want to lean into that. And then post 2030, at that point, in my mind, Bitcoin will have, really emerged as the global reserve money. And at that point, I want to go out and build private cities. So I want to buy large plots of land from broken, non-functional governments with a bunch of other Bitcoiners, and we're going to build cities that are completely free and private, no taxes, just pure membership fee, and come and build. So that's like sort of how I'm staggering my life, but each one of them will need a disproportionate amount of focus.
Wow. I mean, that's really interesting to hear that vision that you shared there. And I think that's quite a unique approach to tackling things. I mean, I think some people share some of that, like for many of us in our 20s, I suppose we think 20s is the decade when I'm going to work hard, maybe play hard as well. And then as I get into 30s, maybe settle down and stuff. So people have some idea of that, but maybe I don't think it's to the
Hmm.
level that you're going into that idea of seeing your life in chapters. So that's quite fascinating to get that perspective on things. I think attention is really important as well. And I think maybe your perspective is extreme, maybe, Um, but I think the idea of where you pay your attention and where you put your energy determining your results is a really powerful one. And I think actually for many people, there's a lot of places we place our energy and attention, which where if we were to cull and edit those things out of our life, we'd probably have more energy and attention for the things that we really need to be doing anyway,
Way more. Yeah, way more.
without
Absolutely.
without maybe being quite as extreme as you're saying. I'm like I think most people could get a 20%, 30% gain if they just actually really reflected on what they're
Yeah,
doing on a day-to-day
yeah, yeah,
basis.
for sure.